Why don't we practice together? So you've arrived. This body has already been through quite a bit to get through your day. So inviting a sense of calmness and kindness towards this body that has gotten you from place to place today, in and out of cold weather, especially just coming out tonight. Maybe you notice that the body is holding its muscles more tight this evening in an effort to stay warm. And just allowing the body and the muscles to loosen, can finally rest. And if you're new to meditative practices, it may be helpful to know that we're invited to have our back straight but not tight. So it's a balancing. And your hands can be in whatever position feel comfortable to you. Some people like to have them on their legs with the palms up or down, or gently held together. And I like to roll my shoulders back to remind myself just to let go of that hunching that I've probably been doing all day, and let them relax. And you can keep your eyes open if you prefer, resting your gaze in front of you or closing your eyes. Allowing the body to come into presence, which invites the mind to do this as well. Tonight I'm going to offer a practice of equanimity, particularly focused on feelings relating to caring for others. And this could be caring for one person in your life, or even feelings related to care for the well-being of a whole group of people. And if this does not resonate for you, feel free to tune out my guidance and practice in whatever manner feels right for you this evening. I'm going to invite you to bring to mind someone or a group of people you care about. And perhaps caring for this person or group of people can sometimes feel draining or heavy in some way. This can be someone in your personal life, a parent, someone you know, or it could be someone in your professional life. Or it can be a group of people that you are aware are suffering in some way. And you experience some discomfort out of concern for their well-being. Just bringing to mind either this person or people for whom you care, and perhaps in some ways that care can feel heavy at times. I'm going to offer some phrases that are designed to evoke equanimity. And just see if you can let them drop into your awareness. Remembering that everyone is on their own life journey. I am not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. So again, thinking about someone you care about or a group of people who may be suffering in some way. And remembering that everyone is on their own life journey. I am not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. And now, focusing on your breathing, just noticing each in-breath. You don't have to breathe specially or deeply, just noticing each in-breath. And then imagine you're breathing compassion in for yourself. With each in-breath, you're breathing in compassion for your own discomfort. You know it's hard to care for this person. And give yourself permission to breathe in for you. With each in-breath, breathing in compassion. And if it helps, if you're a visual person, you can imagine you're breathing in a white or a golden light. Each in-breath, allow the compassion to fill your body, validating your struggle and caring for yourself. But now letting go of the focus on yourself and calling to mind again the person or people that you care about who may be struggling. And now focus on the out-breath. So as you naturally breathe out, imagine that you're breathing out compassion for this other. You're validating their pain, their struggle. You might notice that their pain is hard for you to. And again, you can imagine a visual light that helps maybe filling their body, filling it with compassion, kindness, healing, if you like. And now bringing both together. So imagining yourself with the person or people you care for, letting your breath be easy as you breathe in, breathing in for yourself. And as you breathe out for the other. So compassion in, compassion out. And maybe remembering the phrases once again. Everyone is on their own life journey. I'm not the cause of this person's suffering, nor is it completely within my power to make it go away, even though I wish I could. Moments like these are difficult to bear, and yet I will try to help if I can. And continuing to breathe in compassion and breathe out compassion. And if you would like to let go of this practice and just continue with sitting with your breath just as it is for the remaining minutes of this practice. Or if you'd like to continue to breathe in and out compassion, whatever feels best to you. Just listening to your own heart. So in recent months, at our Tuesday evening gatherings, I've shared thoughts on hope and compassion. And specifically, I talked about wholesome hope, which is feeling hopeful without clinging to things having to change. And this hope can be found in day-to-day lives, such as the sound of laughter, the seasonal changes of nature, and in our own wisdom of knowing there is good, or at least good enough, in this moment. And we talked about the wonderful benefits of compassion. And when we're compassionate, it literally changes our neurochemistry to feeling connected and happier. We discussed that empathy, the perception of feeling what others feel, has shadow sides when it is felt only for those within our group. When we move past our feelings of empathy into a desire to help or compassion, it stops being about how we are feeling and moves into how others are feeling, their well-being instead of ours. And after our last gathering, we had an opportunity to share thoughts. And there were some brilliant questions raised. How can compassion be enough? When faced with some of the most difficult things, like the suffering in Gaza, or even those who are homeless here in Charlottesville, in those moments, to offer only compassion may not feel like enough because the suffering of the other continues. I contemplated these questions after that evening. And as always, I do not have answers. But I wanted to run some thoughts by you for your consideration. Wholesome hope and the practice of compassion are beautiful and meaningful practices. But if we're not able to work with the suffering that leads to the need for these practices, they are not easily accessible. Before we can turn to hope, before we can offer compassion practice, we have to be, and really be, with our own suffering. But even before this, we have to understand that there is both pain and suffering. Without pain, we would not suffer. But pain does not need suffering to exist. The Buddha taught about suffering and the cessation of suffering, and this is actually a joyful teaching. However, he did not teach that there is pain in suffering and an end to pain and suffering. Much that we may wish it were so, there is no getting around that we will feel pain. And this in itself can create suffering. We don't want to feel pain. Now, the Buddha did teach about pain, just not its cessation. And maybe you're familiar with the parable of the two arrows from the Salatha Sutta. Monks, an uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person, I love that, run-of-the-mill person, feels feelings of pleasure feelings of pain, feelings of neither pleasure nor pain. A well-instructed disciple of the Noble Ones also feels feelings of pleasure, feelings of pain, feelings of neither pleasure nor pain. So what difference, what distinction, what distinguishing factor is there between the well-instructed disciple of the Noble Ones and the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person? The Blessed One said, when touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So he feels two pains, physical and mental. Just as if they were to shoot a man with an arrow and, right afterward, were to shoot him with another one. So that he would feel the pains of two arrows. In the same way, when touched with a feeling of pain, the uninstructed run-of-the-mill person sorrows, grieves, and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So he feels two pains, physical and mental. Pain is unavoidable. It's an unavoidable part of life. It comes in many packages. Physical pain, emotional pain, relationship pain. It is that first sensation of ouch that hurts. Witnessing the pain and suffering of others is painful. Even the Buddha experienced physical pain and the pain of losing those for whom he cared. Suffering, on the other hand, it's ours to have or to let go. It's not easy, but it is workable. What is suffering, or also known as dukkha? That's a much longer contemplation than we have time for this evening, but briefly. And I meant to bring the book to show you. Philip Moffat in Dancing with Life says, the Buddha identified three kinds of suffering: the dukkha of physical and emotional pain, the dukkha of constant change, and the dukkha of life's compositional nature, which creates a kind of pressure and unease that is constantly present, even in the best of times. The Buddha taught of suffering in the Four Noble Truths. I like how Moffat frames this teaching. The first noble truth describes the problem. There is dukkha, which is the result. It's the result of how the untrained mind reacts to ever-changing conditions. The second noble truth describes the cause of the problem. Your mind falls into clinging and grasping because of wanting. The third noble truth explains the solution to the problem. A different result is possible, which is the cessation of suffering. And the fourth noble truth lays out the cause of the different result, which is the Eightfold Path. A different result than suffering. Moffat goes on to say, the stress or unease that is dukkha, alienation, despair, uncertainty, lack of control, grief, frustration, fear, anger, longing, constitutes your mind and heart's resistance to life being simply as it is. Any of those resonate? Put simply in the phrase by Shinzen Young, pain times resistance equals suffering. From the parable of the two arrows again. As he is touched by the painful feeling, he is resistant. Any resistance obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. Touched by that painful feeling, he delights in sensual pleasure. Why is that? Because the uninstructed, run-of-the-mill person does not discern any escape from painful feeling aside from sensual pleasure. We want the pain to go away. So we do anything but stay with it. We cling to stories about the pain. We cling to the suffering itself, giving the mind a belief that it is doing something to fix the problem. We ruminate or we avoid. It feels more comfortable to do this in the short term than to accept that this is the way things are in this moment. Moffat gives this example of a painful situation at work. You find out that your company is planning to lay people off, and your first thought is, but what if it's me? And by the way, pay close attention to any thought, sentence, anything you hear that starts with what if. What if? You already know you're heading down some kind of path of horrors, I'm sure. What if? Followed by the mental anguish of imagining getting fired. This is accompanied by a physical reaction. Perhaps you feel nauseous, or your body becomes flushed with heat, and your heart starts pounding. Very quickly, you start telling yourself a story about how difficult your life will be once you've lost your job. And your mind replays the story 100 times. When this happens, you're getting lost in an imagined story about the experience and creating dukkha for yourself. Suffering exists in our thoughts, perceptions, and our stories about the pain. It's a reaction to pain. It's clinging, grasping, it's identifying with the pain and personalizing it. And it gets in the way of wholesome responses to pain. It can make us miserable with no benefit for addressing the actual issue at hand. You might ask yourself, have your feelings of despair or misery benefited anyone, including you? Have they fixed the problem or the pain? It can be challenging to know when we have moved from the direct experience of pain into suffering. We have to know which era we are experiencing so we can know how to respond. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. And that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Viktor Frankl. We might think, well, that's all well and good, but what about when people's lives are harmed? And yes, that is a terrible pain. And there can be an awful sense of helplessness. In another teaching by the Buddha, we learn of the suffering of Gautami. It's a very sad story of a woman who's treated poorly until she has a son whom her family loves. The son dies, and she is stricken with grief, but not just grief. Grief becomes entangled in suffering. Under the influence of her sorrow to the point of madness, Gautami tries to find someone to fix her son. She's eventually sent to see the Buddha, and what does he do? He cannot fix this problem for her. Nothing he can do is enough. If he believes the story, he must take away her pain and bring back her child. This cannot be done. So instead of feeding her madness of suffering, he sends her out to the village seeking a mustard seed from anyone who has not experienced grief. Only then, he tells her, can he create the medicine to end her suffering. Of course, she's not able to find this mustard seed. There are no villagers who have not experienced loss and pain. Gautami then understands at a deep level how she's suffering. We might think, why would he send this poor, suffering woman to go out and do this rather than simply explaining to her what's happening? Why can't we just stop suffering once we know this is happening? It's not that easy, is it? Here's what Gautami said once she experienced for herself the truth of suffering. She uttered this verse. It's not just a truth for one village or town, nor is it a truth for a single family, but for every world settled by gods and men. This indeed is what is true: impermanence. And so saying, she went into the presence of the Master. Then the Master said to her, "Have you obtained, Gautami, the mustard seed?" "Finished, sir, is the matter of the mustard seed," she said. "You have indeed restored me." And the Master then uttered this verse: "A person with a mind that clings, deranged to sons or possessions, is swept away by the death that comes like mighty flood to sleeping town." We might believe that Gautami continued to feel the pain of loss of her son. but she no longer was lost in the madness of her suffering. Moffat says the Buddha referred to this state when the mind is no longer consumed by suffering as nibbana. The pains of life do not disappear, but rather their ability to burn you ceases. I ran across a brief video from Dan Harris of 10% Happier, who shared what I thought was a helpful 5-word phrase. It's all part of it. He went on to say, nobody promised us that being alive was going to be easy. Setbacks, uncertainties, politicians we don't like, it's all part of it. We suffer when we fight against reality. Remembering what Byron Katie says, if you fight with reality, you will lose, but only 100% of the time. So how can we tell if we've moved from pain to suffering? Well, the body always tells the truth. When you find yourself experiencing discomfort, drop into the body. Where do you feel it? The experience of pain and suffering may be similar because they both feel painful to the body, but there may be subtle differences for you. You may wish to spend some time getting to know the body's responses. See what can be learned. And Byron Katie teaches inquiry using something she calls the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. Is anyone familiar with that? As a person? Thank you, Dina. Judge Your Neighbor. Isn't that a great name? Judge Your Neighbor. And you can find it for free on her website. You can go there and just fill it out yourself. I find doing this practice brings daylight to the thoughts and perceptions in which we are caught, but may be unaware. If you are not familiar with Katie, she has lots and lots of videos. You can watch her interacting with people as they go through these worksheets together. It's always amazing to me, incredibly insightful, and she's pretty radical in holding to the truth of things. And I remember watching her work with a young woman activist who was in deep despair regarding the perceived cruelty of a slaughterhouse. She described the people who worked there as terrible people and said she could not feel happy knowing the animals were suffering. Katie walked her through the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet. I won't describe all the details except to say, once they finished, the woman could see how her thoughts and stories about the people and the slaughterhouse were making her life miserable and not helping her cause to help the animals. She felt inspired to create relationships with the people working in the slaughterhouse, to bring changes to how things were done and create a more humane experience. So if you're up for it, I'd like for us to try for ourselves, just for a brief moment, if it feels okay. And Katie does invite usually for you to write your answers down when completing the Judge Your Neighbor worksheet she created. She says it's taking war out of the mind and putting it on paper. But for this evening, just to touch into this experience, and remembering only if you feel comfortable, bring to mind something that's troubling you. Not the most difficult thing, just something that might be a bit irritating. Narrow it down to one particular event that represents this concern. Replay this event in your mind in detail, again, only if it feels comfortable for you. Now complete this sentence. I feel blank because blank regarding this situation. And let me give you an example. I feel unhappy because it is cold, and it's not supposed to be cold in November. So thinking about your situation in particular, I feel something because something. And she encourages the judge your neighbor to be just ruthless in what you're believing, because something. Okay? And once you've done this, ask yourself, is it true, your statement? And the answer is yes or no. In my example, is it true it's not supposed to be cold in November? That would be what I would be answering, yes or no. So you're asking yourself, is it true? Remembering only yes or no answers. Anything more and you're getting lost in story. And then ask, can I absolutely know it's true? And there's no wrong answers here, but it's still only yes or no. When you find the mind starting to go off into a story, then you're no longer present with the question. Yes or no? And this is a meditative practice, so take your time and allow the answer to arise without being forced. Is it true? And next, whether your answer was yes or no, ask yourself, how do I feel when I believe the thought? So, how do I feel if I believe the thought it's not supposed to be cold in November? What arises? And finally, who would I be without the thought? So in my example, a person who is cold in November. So who would you be without the thought? What changes? Well, thank you. Thanks for doing that. On her worksheet, she actually then has something she calls turnaround. So it even goes a little deeper where you turn the whole story on its head, really. It can bring us many insights and deeper into what stories we're believing. It's something that may need much more time to practice to work with any insights that arise. And I hope it's given you at least a sense of what it's like to objectively inquire into our thoughts and stories. And again, that's why I love it. It's a whole blueprint to just walk you through what are you believing. And thanks for trying it. So getting back to pain and suffering, once we're aware of our pain and suffering, how might we respond? Well, if you know me, this won't surprise you. The first response is self-compassion. We start with self-compassion. Ouch. This hurts. I'm sad you are feeling this way, sweetie. This is awful. We do this first before we investigate. Is this pain or are my thoughts and stories causing this feeling? We ground ourselves and care for ourselves. Instead of fighting with how we feel and the circumstances we are in, we allow them to be experienced and understood with kindness. Then we might try to practice mental noting. Observe what arises in your mind, be it a thought or a sensation. Note the thought with gentle curiosity, giving it a one-word descriptor, something like, hello, fear. Hi there, anger. And then, if possible, let it pass by. Resist the urge to latch on to the thought or feeling. But if that thought or feeling remains sticky, don't fight with it or try to make it go away. Offer yourself compassion for this experience of suffering as well. The suffering persistent story. And you can try using Katie's 4 questions if you like. Not fighting, just contemplating. We dance with the thoughts with kindness. We practice the wisdom of the Eightfold Path. And if we're able to do this, we let go of clinging to our stories, clinging to our suffering. And in time, it will fade as the predominant sensation, and you can let it pass by thanks to the blessings of impermanence. Once the thought story has been known and released, then take the steps that can be taken to address the cause of the pain. So thinking of the young activist who, once she could let go of her suffering, could actually take steps in some way to address what was causing her pain. Addressing the pain, our response involves being mindful of what we are feeling, all of it. Mindful of the physical experience, mindful of our emotions related to pain, mindful of its real impact on our lives and the lives of others. It is to be felt, experienced, but only as much as feels safe to do so. Trusting yourself to know when to pull back and take a break. Respond to the pain with loving care, with compassion. Pain is non-negotiable. We might not like that, but here we are. We can stand in the rain and argue with the sky, or we can put up an umbrella, or maybe even just jump in the puddles. And before I conclude, I want to say something briefly about concerns of numbing and spiritual bypassing. Being with pain itself, allowing the experience to be felt and known with acceptance, this is not numbing. And once we address our suffering, our ability to take some form of action becomes greater. This is not bypassing. What energy do you want to share with the world? What ripple do you want to create? How can your energy offer a counterbalance to the unwholesome energy that exists? And remember, you can know the world has goodness and kindness in it because you are in this world. Thank you.